Under the gray skies of the northern battlefield, a desperate attempt by Russian forces has once again failed before the sharp eyes of Ukrainian drone pilots. New footage from the front lines shows how an enemy lightning attack relying on motorcycles and ATVs was brutally and precisely halted, even before it could penetrate residential areas. The small Russian convoy moved swiftly, taking advantage of the speed and light maneuverability of their two-wheeled vehicles. The motorcycles and ATVs rode along the open road, attempting to penetrate the defenses towards Vovchanski Khutory, an area now under full control of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, while the town of Vovchansk itself has been secured against enemy infiltration. In one of the most tense moments in the footage, a Russian motorcycle is seen speeding out of control. Panic grips its rider as a Ukrainian drone begins to lock on to its target. In its attempt to escape, the motorcycle loses control and crashes into a comrade's ATV, creating chaos in the ranks. The next moments were decisive. A precision explosion struck the assembly point, ending the lightning attack that had turned into a disaster. Smoke billowed, vehicles were destroyed, and the enemy's attack route turned into a deadly trap. In a follow-up operation, even though the initial attack had been repelled, the Ukrainian pilots did not stop the hunt. The drone's camera captured one remaining target, a Russian motorcyclist attempting to cross the open road, hoping that speed would save him, but it was a futile hope. With characteristic composure and precision, the FPV drone glided low, ruthlessly following the target's path, and the subsequent explosion marked the end of the escape, bringing the day's operations to a close. This footage reiterated the harsh reality of the modern battlefield. Speed and courage without cover are no guarantee of survival. In the area around Vovchansk, the skies belonged to Ukraine, and any enemy movement, no matter how small, risked total annihilation. For the Ukrainian Defense Forces, this was not just a tactical victory, but a clear message. Any attempt to breach secured territory would be hunted down, tracked, and stopped before it could become a real threat. Meanwhile, there were important developments in the direction of Dnipropetrovsk. 10 Russians surrender as Leopard tanks blast fortifications near Novopavlivka. Here, after a successful clearing operation on the northern bank of the river, Ukrainian forces are starting their next operation to push forward. Despite the Russians anticipating such a move, the Ukrainian command is spearheading the assault, using Marines and tanks to penetrate the Russian flank deeper. Ukraine's main objective in this sector is to advance into the Russian-held area and create a credible threat on the flank of the Russian offensive directed toward Novopavlivka. The Ukrainians need to escalate pressure in this sector to further erode the Russian effort exactly when the Russian assault has stalled, and Ukrainian units have the chance to turn the tide. In doing so, the Ukrainian command seeks not only to interrupt the tempo of the Russian advance, but also to force Russian commanders to reallocate personnel and resources to secure their vulnerable flank, consequently undermining their broader operational posture. Novopavlivka holds strategic significance because the settlement is located on both banks of the river. If Russian forces capture even one side, the opposing bank will become considerably more difficult for Ukraine to defend. And similar to the situation in Ivanivka, any captured ground could provide Russia with an improved crossing point for further offensive operations. The main Ukrainian advantage is that now they have full control over Ivanivka, which facilitates the creation of a staging ground for further operations. As the settlement is secured, Ukrainian forces can use it as a crossing point over the Volcha River and start attacking to the east, conducting disruptive operations against enemy troops and infiltrating their forward positions. Bad weather conditions, such as fog, would also help them get behind enemy lines, as the Russian reconnaissance drones wouldn't be able to spot them. If we take a look at the topographic map, we can see that the Ukrainian positions on the high ground can also be used to support further Ukrainian counteroffensive operations, providing excellent mortar positions and starting positions for drones. However, Ivanivka is on the same level as the Russian positions east of the river, which means that Ukrainian forces will need to assault on even ground, despite enjoying fire support from the elevation behind the village. After being pushed behind the river, Russia now has the advantage of using the river as a natural defensive barrier, protecting its forces against prospective Ukrainian counterattacks by complicating Ukraine's capacity to reliably sustain its advancing forces. Geolocated footage shows how Ukrainian Leopard 1A5 tanks are softening up Russian fortifications by firing their cannons directly into them to destroy the enemy personnel and pin them down while the Ukrainian Marines arrive. After the initial raid, the tanks pulled back to the rear to avoid the Russian drones, while the Ukrainian troops started clearing the trenches. Their efforts were supported by a reconnaissance drone, which enabled commanders to monitor the operation in real time and guide the soldiers on the ground, helping them avoid potential ambushes and identify threats not visible from their vantage point. The soldiers maneuvered carefully because the roof of the fortification partially collapsed due to the firepower of the tanks. As the Ukrainian forces descended into the tunnels, they conducted a systematic sweep. As a result of the Ukrainian operation, 5 Russian soldiers were eliminated and 10 more surrendered, as they realized that no one would help them and they were surrounded. The Russian prisoners of war were subsequently interrogated and escorted to the Ukrainian rear to further increase the exchange fund. Overall, the Ukrainian counteroffensive efforts appear to be building on the momentum generated by the liberation of Ivanivka, applying sustained pressure on the exposed Russian flank and complicating further Russian attempts to advance toward Novopavlivka. By consolidating more gains and compelling Russian forces to defend a widening front, Ukrainian Marines are not only stabilizing the sector, but also shaping conditions that will force the Russian command to divert reserves. As the situation evolves, follow-on Ukrainian actions will be influenced by Russia's ability to reinforce and maintain cohesion. If Russia's response remains slow, the current Ukrainian posture could open opportunities for deeper tactical exploitation and more advances